Hi, I'm Nicole Slowey. I'm the Operations Director here at Qdos. Today I'm going to be speaking about IR35 off-payroll legislation for end clients and recruitment agencies. Off-payroll reform coming April 2020 is a change in legislation which will see end client organisations and fee-paying organisations, more often than not a recruitment agency, becoming responsible for both determining the IR35 status of the contractors that they engage, as well as then being liable and financially responsible for making relevant tax deductions in respect of those determinations. This is quite a big change. As it stands at the moment, it's the contractors themselves that are directly responsible for making those determinations and relevant deductions. This is a continuation of reform that came into the public sector in 2017, where organisations in that space have been having to make determinations on the contractors that they engage and subsequently paying them appropriately since that legislation reform was introduced in April 2017. Under the off-payroll rules, end client organisations will be responsible for making a determination on the contractors that they engage. Now, what's involved in that determination requires the client to make a status determination of the contractors that they engage by way of ascertaining if that contractor is operating inside the legislation or caught by the legislation, akin to an employee-employer relationship, or operating outside of the legislation with the contractor operating as a genuinely self-employed contractor. The end client organisation must issue a status determination statement which outlines the determination that has been given, so either inside or outside, as well as rationale and basis for that determination. The client subsequently has an obligation for sharing that determination with the next party in the supply chain, typically a recruitment agency, as well as then for that determination to be subsequently shared with the contractor. Under the legislation, clients have an obligation to take reasonable care when arriving at their determination to ensure that they're approaching their compliance activities appropriately. If a client organisation does not take reasonable care or does not in fact actually make a determination and pass that determination down the supply chain, the client will be considered the fee payer for carrying the financial liability until it actually fulfils its obligations. Under the legislation, more often than not, you'll hear a recruitment agency being referred to as a fee payer. Now, fee payer responsibility under the new legislation is a little bit different to that of a client. Now, fundamentally, if you're in a shorter supply chain where it is a client, a recruitment agency and a PSC contractor, the agency will simply have an obligation to take the determination provided by the client and then apply that determination to any payments made to the contractor, i.e. if your client makes a determination that your contractor is operating inside of IR35 and is subsequently caught by the legislation, you as an agency or a fee payer have an obligation to make the relevant tax deductions at source from that contractor's pay. Now, you may wish to do this by engaging the contractor on a PAYE basis. You may do this by engaging the contractor via an umbrella company, or you may wish to do this by engaging the contractor still via the limited company but by making a deemed payment to their business. Now, if you have a longer supply chain where there are multiple agencies in the chain, and you in fact are not considered a fee payer, then the obligation that you have is to ensure that the determination or the status determination statement that has been issued to you is subsequently passed down to the next party in the supply chain next to you, ensuring that you fulfil your obligations. Now, in that scenario, if you are passed the status determination statement and you make the decision not to pass that on to the next party in the supply chain, you become the fee payer for tax purposes and fundamentally carry that financial liability in respect of payments made to that contractor or those group of contractors until such times as you actually fulfil that obligation by passing the determination down the supply chain. Statement of work, or SOW as it's commonly referred to, is a mechanism which has been given a huge amount of press in respect of IR35 off-payroll reform. Now, SOWs and statements of work have been a common practice in the contractor and contingent labour and consultancy market for quite some time. They are a compliant measure, a way and method in which to engage with suppliers and receive services. But I think what organisations need to be mindful of is that just because you either provide your services to your client organisation, if you are a consultancy firm, via an SOW, or if you're an individual consultant or contractor who provides your services to your consultancy or in fact your client via an SOW, it does not automatically mean that A, you're outside of IR35, or B, that the organisations engaging you do not actually have to adhere to the legislation. So we'll break that down into a couple of parts. So SOWs and statements of work are being utilised by a lot of organisations out there as a means of demonstrating to client organisations a way in which they can, for all intents and purposes, circumvent their responsibility. This links back to an exclusion, if you like, within the legislation whereby it stipulates that if a client is the recipient of fully outsourced services, it does not need to consider the legislation, as it in fact is the recipient of outsourced services. It is the supplier of those services that needs to consider IR35 if there are contractors being supplied in the supply chain. That scenario works perfectly well where you have a genuine consultancy providing an outsourced, fully owned project to a client organisation, and it's sensible that it's that consultancy that has the end client responsibility for making the relevant determinations on the contractors that it engages. What's important for organisations to consider is that if you are simply labelling something a fully outsourced service or simply structuring something a statement of work, it will not automatically mean that that piece of work will be considered a fully outsourced service. So it's important that organisations fully understand the scenarios where they have perhaps more unique delivery of services or consultancy arrangements or statement of work arrangements or managed service arrangements, that it fully understands in what scenario an organisation would be considered the end client and in what scenario the organisation would be considered the fee payer. From a contractor's perspective, if you have contractors who are delivering services to you via an agency on an SOW basis, whilst that is a good mechanism for outlining the specifics of that project, which gives key deliverables and outcomes, that does not automatically mean that the contractor would be considered outside of IR35. And again, if that is being positioned to you via a consultancy firm or an agency or a client, it's important to make sure that that structure is appropriate for the work that's been undertaken. And if that structure is actually being put in place contractually and that you have signed schedules with SOWs on them, the important thing to remember is that if you're simply trying to position and make something look like a statement of work or a fully outsourced structure, HMRC have the powers to review those engagements and look to see where you are genuinely providing those services, or if you've used that as a means of trying to circumvent your responsibilities or your client responsibilities under the legislation. So as I said, they are perfectly acceptable methods of working. They've existed in the market for quite some time and work really effectively in some industries and some pockets of organisations. But it's important to make sure that in whichever method you utilise the services of contractors within your business, you're doing so compliantly and that working arrangements and contractual terms are aligned, and that the organisations are meeting the relevant responsibilities and obligations under the off-payroll legislation. There are a number of ways in which we can help your organisation prepare for off-payroll reform. We're working with a lot of organisations client side to help with some due diligence pieces of work pre-reform. The purpose of these IR35 audit exercises is to give the organisations a view of how contractors operate within their business, how the business utilises the services of contractors, and actually what that consequently will mean going forward from an IR35 perspective. It's imperative that organisations look inwards and get a feel for how contractors operate within their business as a starting point of their strategy. As client organisations, you have a huge amount of influence over how contractors deliver the services into your business, and subsequently you can actually implement changes within your business which could more positively position your organisation's use of contractors and in consideration of a more positive outcome from an IR35 status determination. Before organisations implement a thorough strategy as to what your specific approach is going to be around your use of contractors going forward and how you're going to meet your compliance organisations, an IR35 audit is a really good step in order to give you that insight, that level of detail, in order for the business to make relevant and informed decisions as to what its plans are going to be going forward. And like I said, could optimise the way in which you utilise contractors within the business to the benefit of an IR35 determination. In preparation for reform, as well as business as usual purposes, we're working with organisations both client and fee payer side in order to introduce our status review facility. Status Review was a facility that we designed in late 2016 to support organisations in the public sector with a mechanism by which they could make individual case-by-case assessments on the contractors that they engage. Status Review is a fully outsourced IR35 compliance management facility, which incorporates the individual status assessments of contractors, which they participate in. It sees client organisations become involved in that determination process and gives all the parties in the supply chain a substantive audit trail via our online platform, via the relevant documentation and status determination statements being issued, ensuring that every party in the supply chain is participating in a transparent, fair and compliant determination process. Thank you for listening. If you want to have access to some more content like this, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you want some more information about the services I've discussed today, please see the information provided in the description box below.